Welcome to the Configure Price Quote podcast. My name is Frank Sohn and I'm the founder of CPQ Consulting. This podcast is 100% focused on Configure Price Quote, also known as CPQ, and will provide you useful insights into this topic. Hello everyone, this is another special episode of the CPQ podcast, and that's because I still encounter lots of open questions concerning the CPQ Sales Report. So that's an industry analyst report that Novo CPQ issues. I've talked about this in the podcast before, but since there are still quite some open questions, I explain a little bit more why we came up with this report and what's included in it. So first of all, we have now this SAP CPQ report, which was released recently. There's another one, Salesforce Revenue Cloud Advanced, coming out pretty soon. And I want to tell you a little bit on how we came up with this. So as you may or may not know, Novo CPQ works regularly with customers to select solutions. So what we see there is basically that customers do lots of Google searches. They may also look at some of the large industry analyst reports. They may look at online resources to find solutions. The outcome from most of these efforts is that they have some kind of Excel sheet where are anywhere between 5 and 20 different solutions, right? So that also depends a little bit if a customer is looking the first time, if they already have a solution, they look for an alternative solution. But that's typically how it starts. And then we see similar questions popping up, right? And we wanted to cover that in a report because the current model is no longer scalable. I cannot tell everyone personally what they should know about the solution, but we want to give everyone a base knowledge so that you can ask better questions and you can ask them sooner. That's the basic idea behind it, right? And when we looked at this, is okay, we are too small to have something as competitive as the large industry analyst reports where you have all the vendors participating and then you rank them against each other. That's not the purpose of this report. The purpose of this one is you want to understand the solution better. You want to understand what kind of questions you would have to ask, what kind of capabilities they have, and before you actually actively engage with anyone, you want to know, is that what you had in mind? Do you want to really pursue this, right? And that's what's meant to be covered in here. So it will not answer all your questions that you have, and that's not the purpose. It will give you enough base knowledge. It will give you enough possibilities to ask better questions and to ask them sooner, because instead of sitting in meetings with consultants and you're paying $200 or $250 an hour and learn all these things, you could do this on your own time and for a much lower price point, right? So that's why we also wanted to offer these reports at an affordable rate that most people can afford, because you will probably have to buy multiple reports to come up with who is going to be the solution that you're actually implementing. So now what's included in this? So it's a conclusion. So I've been working with CPQ solutions for the last 30 years or so, or almost 30 years, since 96. And I tell you, based on what I see, what do I think is this solution really good for? Where does it shine? When do you want to look at this as a potential solution? So it's no comparison to other solutions. You will also learn who is going to compete with that solution, obviously. But that's not the main purpose, right? So the main purpose is really to find out, what is this solution really good at? What do they really do? And then you can see for yourself first, okay, is that something that addresses your business problems, or does it not address your business problems, right? You also see what the company is focusing on, because you want to see, are they really actively focused in the industry that you're working in as a customer, right? Do they have the experience with your customer size? How many of these projects do they run, and so on? So you get a little bit better idea of where they really focus. And you see, and I think that's very important, what are typical requirements that other customers come up with? Because I see this over and over when these initial long lists are put together. They often have, as I said, could have many different vendors there based on Google searches and all kinds of information, mostly haphazardly put together. You also see what are the typical requirements. Is that what the requirement that you have in mind as well, so that you can see, is there some overlap? Is that really worth looking into? So you get some idea about that. And I think what's very important, I see that with every prospect here, is the customer feedback, because every time you talk to a vendor, they are trying to sell you something. Even when you talk to an analyst, you may have a feeling they are trying to sell you something, right? So in this case, I think customer feedback is really very important, because you will be a customer at when you decide to go with that solution. And then it's important to see, what do others say about this? What was their experience? And that's not, these other customers don't try to sell you anything. You hear what the experience is. So now you cannot talk to all the customers on your prospect list. So if you have 10 on them, you want to get some kind of idea. You probably have to talk to 3 to 5 different customers from each vendor to get an idea. So if you do that, very time consuming. In this case, you have it in the report, at least 3 customer references where we talk to for 30 minutes. We take notes, we compare it, we consolidate the notes afterwards, and provide you a good feedback of what we learned from the 3 customers that we talked to. Now, one thing is obvious. Every time you're selling something, you want to look as good as possible when you do that. So the customers that we're talking to in most cases are reference customers that the vendors gave us. In some cases, the vendors did not give us the reference customers, but we talked to them anyway. So you have to take even that with a little grain of salt. But I think it's still very helpful, because if you're a customer, I want to know what others say about it and want to learn that. Then I also want to see, what's the economic impact of the solution. Okay, you always hear these things that the process is going faster, you have less errors when you increase your upsell, cross-sell, and so on. So, and it's nice to have a check with real customers to see what do they really see when they implement the solution, right? So, and you get some information about that as well. Then I think it's also key capabilities. I see many prospects, when they talk initially to vendors, they talk to many vendors. They want to see the solution. They want to get the feeling for what it is, how it looks like. And then they get surprised by a couple of capabilities they may not need, but that look very cool. In this case, I think it's sometimes better to sit down yourself first, see what you need in your company. Yes, sometimes it's very good to get these additional ideas, and maybe it's something that you could really benefit from. But sometimes it's also a distraction and shows you things that the vendor is good at, but that you don't really need, but you may think you need it. So to take a little bit of time, read through the capabilities yourself and really see what's important for you. Where should you ask more questions? And what does it mean from a user point of view? So if a user uses these capabilities, what does it mean for them? And also, you will have to administer a solution probably one way or another. What does it mean from an administration point of view? So that's all covered in the report. You also see the key partners that firms work with. You, like in the SAP CPQ report, you don't have an exhaustive list of all the partners that they work with, but you have the key partners in there. And for some of the smaller vendors, you have all the partners in there, right? So that depends a little bit on the quantity of folks that the teams partner with, and then you get more information, obviously. You also get an idea what's the average project duration for these projects. I think it's also very helpful, because that also probably gives you an idea about the budget you will have to set aside. And that is also something that many prospects don't want to talk about too early, vendors don't want to talk about too early, but which I think is important for you also to understand, what kind of investment will you have to make? Are you ready to make this investment? Do you have the teams to support this investment, and so on? So the average project duration is important, because it also shows you how long or how big of an effort this will be to actually start and execute this project. Then I think when you work with the different vendors, it needs to include some kind of business outlook. What do you expect from this vendor going forward? What are some of the risks? What do they do especially well? And what do you expect from them in the future? What kind of roadmap do they have? In this case, it's very important to remember not the complete roadmap is on this list, obviously, because that's not the point. I see also that other CPQ vendors buy these reports, so you don't want to give away competitive information, but at least you want to go ahead and show what are the big things that you're working on. If you don't see anything that you would have expected in this report, I suggest then you can still go back later to the team and ask them a little bit more. They will all have people who are happy to talk to the roadmap, but they may not want to put it in this report, at least not everything that they are working on, because from some of the vendors I have 4 or 5 pages of items that they're working on, and that's not all reflected, obviously, for obvious reasons, as I just mentioned in the report. So I think, and I hope that this was a much better, much more detailed explanation than I have done before. The report is available in German and English, and there will be more reports. We still have a very aggressive goal of having at least 20 plus reports, maybe even 30 available by the end of the year. But the way this goes, I'm not sure if that will really happen. We will still strive to do that. We do the reports in German and in English. And that was just a coincidence with German, but we do every report right now also in German. And I think anyone who's doing business in the German-speaking area in Europe will be grateful for that. So keep in mind, so it will not answer all the questions, but it will address the key questions. You have a report for $999. Even if you buy 3 or 5 reports, is much cheaper than when you sit with a specialist for hours on end in face-to-face meetings to discuss these things, and you may not find all of the things that you're looking for if you're not the CPQ specialist, right? So you will not know what to ask for, what to look for, and that's very understandable because that's not your job, right? So you do that as a project, and that's what it is. So I hope this is a very, very compelling offering for all of you. I hope that's a tool that helps you to speed up your CPQ solution selection, and where you can fall back to and look up things also later down in the selection project. And I look forward to doing many more of these. I think the information that's in there is kind of unique, at least I hope it is, right? So, but I have not seen it anywhere else yet, and I think that should give you also a really, hopefully, unique perspective when you select these solutions. I've done these for years. I didn't formalize it with these reports, but I've done the same approach, and these are annually renewed reports. Anyway, so I hope this was helpful, explains what the CPQ sales report is. I'm very excited that we did the one with SAP CPQ. As I said, Salesforce will come up as well, and I'm really looking forward to see how you like it, how you use it, and see a lot of the points I mentioned proven by customers who actually used it in the way it was intended to be used. So thank you very much, everyone. I'd like to thank everyone for listening and hope you learned something interesting today. If you like the podcast, please go ahead and rate it on iTunes or share it with your friends and colleagues. In the meantime, you can find us online at www.novoscpq.com. So long, everyone.